How's it going, everyone? I'm Motive Games, and this is going to be our week update for build of the week on Melee Cold Shaman. There is going to be a little bit of a format to this. We're going to start with progression, how far the build went, then talk about some brief general overview of the build. After that, we'll do a little bit of gear progression, where I think the build can go from here if you wanted to continue it, and then overall pros and cons. For future's sake, I do want to note I'm actually working on like a little graphic to make this better for next videos. If there's anyone who thinks that they could help me with this, feel free to reach out into the comments, as this is something I feel like is a very weak point of my content creation. Anyways, so progression of the build, we did end up at 278. For corruption, blood, frost, and death is the one that I did the most because I was looking to get frostbite shackles for this with 1 LP. Never ended up rolling it, which was a little unfortunate. I do think that it would be the best thing for safety on this build. Now, in terms of how it's performing at this level, it's honestly barely getting by. I die all the time trying to run these monoliths. Even running bosses like Shade of Orbis is a struggle the whole way through. I think 300 would be a hard peak with the gear that I currently had running the build, but there is a lot of room left for improvement. I wouldn't be surprised if we get best in slot gear, it would be possible to push somewhere to like maybe 350, maybe 400, but I can't really see it pushing anywhere close to something like 1,000, not even with perfect rolls. So now let's go ahead and move on to the overview. I would say that honestly it feels like a strictly worse cold bear. There are some things that it does slightly better. One of those things would be Earthquake. Because we generate so much mana with Gathering Storm and the passive node Tempest form, we can actually Earthquake pretty much on cooldown with no real delays. It's very easy for us to constantly keep topped up on mana, constantly casting it, and pretty much keeping a full uptime on our buffs. The build really just did end up devolving into spamming Earthquake, Gathering Storm taking a back seat, and just funneling mana into that. Originally, I thought if we stacked enough crit multi and we're able to get our crit chance to 100% with Gathering Storm, thanks to the plus 20% flat from Maelstrom, it would be able to overtake Earthquake. And honestly, I don't think that's the case. I do think it was worth going for, as it is a pretty high damage increase since we will still be casting Gathering Storm, but Earthquake is just so low committal for such high damage. You just throw it and then you can keep attacking while the extra tremors come out, that I don't think there's any world that you ever just stop doing that. Oh, as a little off note, you've probably been watching this footage that's playing alongside this and noticing I keep dying a lot, and that is because for the sake of this video, I have chosen to upload basically unedited footage. This is just like back-to-back runs on Monolith attempt, and I'm dying like maybe every other one. Sometimes I would even die 3-4 times in a row. And again, that's just one of the things that make this build so difficult to climb with. As a note, the developers have said that they feel like the baseline for a build is somewhere around 300 corruption. That's where they feel like a build is performing well. I would say this build is definitely underperforming them because we've put a lot of effort into gearing this build. This is a higher level character than it would normally be at this point, like level 97 running these maps, and I'm still dying all the time. That hopefully means that this build in some way could be improved, but the existence of Cold Werebear and how good it is means it's unlikely to see buffs outside of Shaman itself being buffed. Let's move on to gear progression. All right, so for itemization, I want to make this quick, as I think that like there's no point in making a long video on a build that I really don't think is that great. Kermod's Cage is a great chest piece upgrade. You want to get health regen on it. There is an alternative actually here in basics. If you can get a perfectly rolled beast mail with like tier 6 or tier 7 health regen and then a bunch of other lines that are good on it, this might even be better than Kermod's, to be honest. However, I got this before I got that, so not a bad upgrade. 2 LP Frostbite Shackles, ideally putting both health regions on it. Flat is always more important than percentage because of how much we have percentage. For Apogee, this is actually what I believe to be best in slot weapon. If you can get tier 7, even tier 6 is better, flat cold melee affix on it, then this will do more damage than the second Shard of the Shattered Lance because it ends up just being more flat melee cold. Boots, there's actually 2 decisions here. I went with Solron Steps for this. You need a tier 7 physical resist affix so that you're not going like heavily negative into your fizz res. I wouldn't wear this until you can get that line on it, and then ideally like a flat health regen or percentage would help as well. The difference between the two ends up being like 60 health regen when we have almost 2k, so it's not a big deal. Best in slot ring is going to be 2 coral rings in my opinion. If you're using Soul Run Step, we're gonna go with freeze rate multi for the tier 5 affix. One of your rings needs to be exalted crit strike chance and the other one will be exalted health regen. The reason for this is because we are really want to get our crit strike up to 100% when we're using Gathering Storms with max stacks of Maelstrom. Now for the other pair of boots, The alternative to those boots is actually going to be Morning Frost here, as you can see, with both health regen lines on it. If you're going to use Morning Frost, instead of the freeze rate on your coil rings, put tier 5 dex, because every point of dex will give you a point of flat melee cold, which of course means more damage. It'll lower our resistances some, but that's fine. As you can see here, we drop a little bit to like 67. It's not a big deal. This can actually be worked around with. The reason for that is because if we come here, you see on conditions, when we summon our totems, we're going to get a massive amount of res. Pretty much overcapping drastically, and the reason for that is because we want more cold res for the frostbite shackles. If you don't have frostbite shackles, you can actually come here to passives and drop some points out of protective circle, move them wherever you want. There's no like super important node you need to focus on. But once you get frostbite shackles, you want 5 points in there to hit this high amount of cold res so that you get more ward retention. We've got a belt, spider silk, so that we get more resistances, the usual stuff on it, you know, increased health, regen, hybrid health, cold damage. Amulet. Crit strike multi I think is really good here because again we want to get our crit up, so once we're critting we want to do more damage. We have a 3-buy idle here because if you get tier 5 on both of the rings and then you also have this 3-buy that's well rolled, you can actually get 100% crit strike bonus pretty easily off of that. This lets us free up our blessing slot in Reign of Dragons so that we can get Grand Resolve of Humanity for all resistance. We also took health, endurance, cold shred, very helpful, and then health regen and Grand Rhythm of Tides off of ending the storm. That's pretty much everything for this. For some quick notes on the passive tree, we've cut down a lot on Shaman. As you can see, we're pretty much running the totem stuff, a little bit of cold so that we can get the flat, and then some mana gain on Tempest Form. This actually was really helpful for getting out as many earthquakes as possible. Most of our points from there have went in the Beastmaster. We pay the usual tax, pick up Aspect of the Shark, 5 points here to get Shred, 4 points on Hunters of the Deep to get almost 100% uptime on it, and then 5 points here so that we can get some melee damage leech so that we don't have to rely on something, so that we don't have to worry about it in our gear. 7 points into Druid to pick up Tritonia's Plating, and that's pretty much it, other than the base, which has not changed. Now let's go over some pros and cons for the build. The first pro is that once you get the set bonus and then just a few pieces of gear with health regen, the damage comes online pretty quickly at a nice floor, right? We're able to clear up to empowered pretty smoothly. The build is deceptively good then, with the following pro or con being that it caps out very quickly too. Kind of unfortunate there, right? One of the other big pros I would say is that all of this gear is applicable to Cold Werebear. So any work you put into this build, you can just immediately pivot to Cold Werebear and have a much better time. But that's basically where I feel like the pros stop. I think once Shaman gets buffed again, we can maybe revisit this, but for now, I really would stay away from it unless it's just a style of play that you kind of want to visit. It needs a lot of funding and it needs to get some really well-rolled gear, and because it can't get to high corruption, it often just means you have to play another build to fund this to begin with. So maybe me playing this for a week ends up saving you some time and investing this because you're not interested anymore. To be honest, that's kind of best case scenario here in my opinion. Anyways, I hope you guys liked the video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment down below, and we'll try to figure out what the next one is for this soon. Peace.